Bharat Sundaresan. Thanks for accepting my invitation to be on Deep Thinking with Dr. Stephen Stolz. Now, for those of you who are listening to this, I just want to make a quick note so you're aware that we'll be providing an audio file for those who listen to my show on podcasts. And of course, I'm actually also videotaping this if you can't see this, and we'll make it available on YouTube for those who actually use that platform. There'll be other platforms will make this available as well, but for instance, my website and so on. So thanks for accepting my invitation. I should point out before I go to you is how we met is really funny, is that I was actually getting a coffee, and as I came out, I saw you, and this was around the same time your Australian Story came out on ABC.
Right, a long time ago,
And I thought, oh, shit, do I go introduce myself or what should I do? And I thought, no, you seem like a very friendly person. And I introduced myself and so on, and I said, oh, do you welcome, can I interview? And you were, to your credit, you really are a friendly person, and he accepted straight away. So a lot of people go, oh, how do you know Bharat? Well, guess what? I met Bharat in the street.
There you go. That's the best place to meet. And firstly, thanks for that introduction, Steve. And do I have to call you Doc or like?
You call me Steve.
I prefer Steve. Like Doc makes you sound if I call you
like
Doc,
I'm going to do a medical procedure on you.
Absolutely, there has to be like a prognosis or diagnosis of some kind. But you're right. I mean, that's exactly how we met, and I love a chat, as you discovered even that morning. And I'm always open to meeting new people. And people often ask you in journalism, right? Oh, I mean, especially when you're a sports journalist, and especially international sport, where there's not the same kind of churn that you see in, say, a domestic league like the AFL or the NRL, where there are a lot of new players coming on the scene all the time. With international sport, the chances are you're going to write about the same people, interview the same people for a period of 10, 12 years. So a lot of young journalists say, oh, I don't have anything left to ask them. I don't have anything left to write about them. And then that's when I step in and become the old grumpy journalist, and I tell them, well, then you're not doing your job right. Because people evolve, people change all the time. And I've always learned and realized and enjoyed actually the aspect of life where you just keep meeting new people, chat to them. You never know what you pick up from them, because you always do. I think that's just human nature, and that's just how we're built.
Yeah. I guess I want to extend on that question, because I agree, you are a very friendly person. Like, I was a stranger, and here I am just kind of turning up and saying, oh, hello, my name's Steve. But why do you think you're popular? Like, you are very popular for a whole range of reasons. But of course, I want to ask the person themselves why you think you are popular.
Well, thank you for saying that I'm popular. No, I mean, I think it goes back to how, not just now, I've always been in my life is like very true to who I am. Whether it's the way I speak, the way I am with people, the way I obviously wear clothes, or and the hair obviously has been around for more than half my life now. I'm 40, but I've had the long hair since 16 or 17, and that's a story in itself. But I guess I get asked that question more in the context of Australian cricketers and just cricketers in general, and why I seem to get along with so many of them. But I guess, firstly, just the basic cliched principle of I treat people the way I would like to be treated. And I really have never been able to see any division between people in terms of class or ethnicity or any kind of hierarchy at all in terms of like where they stand. And I think that's one reason I've been able to do my job really well for so long, is I've never been awestruck by any cricketer or any athlete or any famous person that I've met. But at the same time, I've never looked down at anyone. So I think it just allows me to be balanced with that. And I guess I have the ability to entertain people. Like I've always had that. I've always, from the time I was very, very young, I was very popular in the family, and then I went to school and I was very popular there. Not because I was the best looking person or I was the richest person or I had anything to give. The only thing I could do was always entertain people and make people laugh. And I think like that always goes a long way. If you can make people laugh, whoever you are, whether you're a nice person or not, I think that automatically gives you that head start in terms of popularity. I think that has always worked for me. But more than anything else, This is what I've been told. It's just that I have genuine warmth, I guess. I like to hug people a lot, whether they like it or not. But I've just normalized the hug since the Australian story, which I really appreciate.
Sure. That was a notable feature.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I thought, wow, this guy likes a lot of human contact.
Yeah.
You know, I was watching and I thought, hang on, that didn't seem to be for the camera or it looked genuine.
It is very genuine.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, at times my wife has stepped in and said, I don't think everybody likes being hugged. I said, no, I think I'm going to normalize. And then I know, like, you know, especially in sport and male sport, where there's a lot of inbuilt machismo and like, even like you leave the physical contact to what happens out there in the field, right? There's a lot of, you know, like standoffish, like handshakes and high fives, even though they'll be patting each other on the bottom while the game's on.
Yeah.
I take a lot of pride in the fact that more people...
And hogging on the field as well.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. All of that like happens there. But off the field, they like to have this masculine distance for some reason.
Yeah.
And I mean, it has, I mean, gender no bar. I just hug people everywhere I go because I think it's also my way of spreading warmth. I think as a special needs teacher, my wife always tells me when you have a kid who... you know, who's going through a lot, and and you would know this as well, when he or she's throwing a tantrum, the best way to calm them down is to, you know, there's that whole, the endorphins and all of that, the science involved with it, but and I don't, it's not that I just like force myself on people, but I don't know, you just kind of have that sixth sense, or I do, where I know when someone does need a hug. So, and the fact that now more and more people in my orbit are okay not just receiving hugs but offering hugs, not to me but to everyone else as well. I think that's why I say I've normalized the hug, and being friendly is like probably because I didn't grow up with a family where affection or love or care was very evident, or it wasn't like offered to you the way it is in, say, more conventional families. I've sought it elsewhere. So I've always, and you know, a lot of people say, oh, I built a family on this planet, but for me, that is the family. So, I mean, I'm still in talking terms with my mother. I always have been. My brother, not so much. My father is long gone. He passed away more than 10 years ago. So I've always like kind of thrived on that family, the external family. And it's not just me. That's just how our family is. My mother's the same even now. In terms of, you know, prioritizing her friends and her massive group of friends. Like, she's kind of like me, she's very popular, she's very social, but she would any day prioritize them over me. And I would do the same as well. So you know, and I've always used this like pretty dark analogy of, and I often bring this up with my mother. Like, if you're in a sinking ship, I guess 99.99% human beings, the first thing they'll do is try to save their family or save someone closest to them. I don't think we're built like that. Like, we might choose everyone else, and not intentionally avoid one of our own. But I don't think we'll prioritize my mother will prioritize me, or I'll prioritize her, or my brother to start with. Like, you know, that's just how we're built. So as a result, I think I've just gone around the world creating a family, and I speak to everyone. I genuinely speak to. You know, people, again, that question of, oh, how are you so popular with the Australian cricketers? I tell them, but you don't see how popular I am with the security guys and the barista and everyone else working and catering at the stadium as well. Because I always will ask the barista or the catering staff on day one, firstly, I start with the name. And like, you know, when during the test summer, people at times get astounded by the fact that I know the catering lady, the lady in charge of catering at the Gabba, as well as I do Pat Cummins or someone. Like, she'll come looking for me to give me a hug. So I guess all of that just bleeds into it.
Now, you realise you're an Australian success story. Like, I would say you are quintessentially modern Australia. Are you aware of that?
No, I never thought of it like that.
No, you really are. You are an Australian success story purely because this whole country is built on immigrants. And migrants to Australia. I think of myself, my great-grandfather, and most of the people I work with, you know, so this kind of idea that we're, you know, we had this kind of well-known trope that, you know, what an Australian is. I think you're an example of how that's shifted and changed. Have you ever had anyone say that to you? That I think that you're a success story, an Australian success story.
I mean, I have heard that quite a bit, but not in that context. Like, I'll give you an example, and it's quite funny. Like, I take my dogs up to the dog park in Balhana. Highly recommend, by the way. Cheap plug for the dog park there. I remember a few months ago, Steve, it was just me. I was walking out of the park with the dogs, walking towards the car, and then I suddenly saw from the corner of my eye a cop on his bike. He was parked like maybe say 100 meters down the road, and as soon as I started walking towards the car, he's kind of like got on his bike, and instinctively you kind of know when a cop wants to come talk to you, right?
Yeah.
I think I do. So then I just saw, I just looked up, and then he kind of got on his bike and like kind of not raced towards me, but rode in our direction. And then he stopped the bike, and I remember right behind us was another man with his dog. He immediately crossed the road. He was like, oh no, something's going to go down here. He just crossed the road because of the way the cop approached me. But then he took his helmet off. He had the loveliest beard. It was this long, thick beard, big guy, must have been in his 50s. And he just kind of, before he even said anything, he just held me by the shoulders, and he started telling me this. He said, like, you are what... This happened just in the wake of the whole marches against Indian migrants and South Asian migrants. So this was probably a week after that. And he just held me by my shoulder, and he got very emotional. He said, like, your success is the answer to all these people who are marching against migrants. Your success is what... And I never thought of it in that fashion. But that did get me thinking about what you just said. And I guess, and I remember writing about this when Australia won the World Cup, the 50-over World Cup. And throughout that World Cup, there was a lot of talk, especially after they lost the first two games, that, this is un-Australian, they're not playing the Australian way. Yep. And Pat Cummins, who I know, love and respect a lot, like, we would go back and forth about what is this Australian way. And I remember telling him one day, I said, like, you know what, Pat, I think it's just a lazy trope. Like, it's just and it happens in all countries, but it's a certain generation who are just resistant to change. I think we're all resistant to change, but I think for me it was just one generation kind of trying to hold back or hold on to what they feel as are the last embers of what they knew Australia to be. I mean, whether it's in terms of ethnicity, whether in terms of, and we all do that in our own sweet way. I mean, we were both complaining about technology, like just off air, and how life's become even more difficult in terms of moving homes. So we all do that differently, but I think that's where the Australian way thing comes from, because I've always believed, and ever since I moved here, that the Australian, and my success in my career comes down to that. I don't think I would have tasted this kind of success in any other country. Because I think Australia allows you to start with, to be yourself. It really encourages you to not fit any template and just be yourself and become whatever you want. And I think in that sense, I do agree with you.
Yeah, I think Australians have got a very good bullshit filter. I think we can see if you're faking it, right?
Yeah.
I think Australians are very good at that. And I use that term intentionally, by the way, bullshit filter, because that's what Australians would call it. They'd call it out. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, you're kind of pretending or acting or faking it, right? Yep. So I think I would agree with your sentiments before about, you know, that genuineness is quite evident. I think that's very endearing, right? And the fact that Australians are very egalitarian, right? The fact that you speak to everyone the same way, that's a big deal, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of articulating in a very different way. But now so back to my point I was making about, now you're an Australian citizen, and the experiment, what I call, is the multicultural Australia. Now that you're Australian, what do you think of Australia and Australia's multiculturalism? And, you know, a lot of people would argue, depending on what side of the fence you're on, does it work or it doesn't work? You know, obviously I don't want to kind of go straight to Bondi, but Bondi could be an example of how things are not working, but I think there are a lot of examples of how it is working. But this is not about me. What do you think?
No, I think it's a great concept or a great idea to promote multiculturalism in any country, especially in a country like Australia and first world nations. And you know, before I even get deep into it, the argument I've always seen, like, you know, with at least the haters on social media, and as you know, there are a lot, and off social media as well, is, oh, well, hang on. Like, for example, when the Usman Khawaja retirement happened, and I wrote about it, and he kind of got me involved in the press conference as well when he was talking about racial stereotyping. I mean, the argument that was raised the most, I remember, was, oh, at least you got a chance to play for Australia. How many white people have played for India? And my argument is, but people don't go to India because it's still not a first world nation. It doesn't have social welfare. Like, you are privileged to live in a country which has all of that. That is why people like me and other migrants move to countries like the UK and Australia and the US and Canada for better opportunities, but also then to give back to, I mean, there will always be the bad apples who are doing it purely for selfish reasons, and they might not give back to the country that has accepted them or adopted them. But I can tell you with great guarantee that 95% of them are not like that. Like, whether they do it in a public space like I do, or whether they do it in their small ways. I mean, there is one guy I met recently, an Indian migrant who came up the hard way, came here to study and worked odd jobs. Now he owns a prominent cafe in the middle of the city, and he still hires only white people. It's not that he's brought his own people and gotten rid of all the white stuff.
And he hires his family, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone working from the front end is a white person. And you know what, Steve? Maybe 3-4 years ago, I never used the term white person or white man or white woman. I started using that more and more of late, purely because, hey, if you can call us brown and black and whatever, so it's just a descriptor, right? Like, you say it's just a descriptor, so I'm going to use it back.
Yes.
And I don't use it with any, I don't do it with any offense or with any condescension. You're a white person, like you are. I mean, and I'm a brown person. Like, I think not normalizing it, if you just use it more often in that sense, it takes away at times, at least for most people, the added baggage that it comes along with. So just going back to what I started with, like, so multiculturalism is a great idea, but to get to a point where people are accepted, the only way you're going to do that is through dialogue and by understanding each other, and firstly through acceptance. And I agree that there will be a generation which will never accept the fact that Australia is changing, the fact that you go to most CBDs or the downtown in any major city in Australia, and there are more non-white people than white people. I think people will never be able to accept that. But that's the same as people not accepting T20 as being a fun format of the game, or
I do have some cricket questions later on.
No, there's so much of that. So I think it'll only happen through dialogue, and good intentions are only going to get you to a certain point. But to go beyond, and I do a lot of work with Cricket Australia and the AFL now, and other bodies where who really genuinely want for there to be more for multiculturalism to become an actual part of what they do. But to get there, you can't just go by numbers. You have to break down. I mean, if you're looking at South Asia, it's such a complex part of the world. You have to, let's say just India. India is like a continent. So if you really are keen, then firstly identify where people come from, which part of India they come from. And then you have to put in a lot of effort. And if you do that, and then, because then what happens is, then there will be no, there won't be the usual stereotypical tropes. There won't be just the tokenism that at times just come through. And then the people who are marching will still march, but they won't be given, or they won't be offered these easy full tosses for them to just smash, which happens whenever there's tokenism, whenever there is that stereotypical tropes that are used to kind of justify multiculturalism.
I'm fortunate enough that I've travelled a fair bit. I think I told you I've been to India a few times. It was a life-changing experience for me. Not only was it the most difficult place I've ever travelled, but it was life-changing in a very positive way. It helped me understand a lot more about, obviously, India and Indian people and so on and so forth. So I would agree, if you can travel, that would be one of the benefits of travel. But I like what you were saying before about opening a dialogue with others. And I think sport, because I've played a lot of sport, particularly cricket and footy, I've played so much cricket with different people from around the world, so many Indians, so many Pakistanis, Sri Lankans, so on and so forth. And I actually learnt more about their cultures from playing with them. So I think, okay, if you can't afford to travel overseas, hey, guess what? If you play cricket, I tell you what, there's a lot of you know, kind of multiculturalness going on. A lot of the cricket clubs I've played in, at least, you know, I think I was at one point, I think I was the only white bloke in the team. Which I don't know, showed a lot about how Australia's changed, really, because I remember when I started out playing cricket, you know, the whole team, you know, were Anglo-Saxon, you know, white, Europeans, and when I stopped playing about 10 years ago, like I said, I reckon I probably would have been, you know, the only white player in the team. It didn't bother me. Yeah. But for some people it would, I think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and that's always going to be there. I mean, you always, I think all of us have that longing for what was and, you know, what our life was like, what the world was like. I mean, I grew up in the 90s and, or forget about going all the way back there. I became a journalist in 2008 and I was just telling a young journalist this 3 days ago. And I said, for the first 3-4 years when social media was not a big deal, you wrote for a newspaper, you broke a story or you wrote something. You were writing for one person, your boss, because you didn't get any feedback about who was reading it. People were not saying good things or bad things about it on social media. There was no social media. And back then, newspapers didn't have news website. They would, but they wouldn't upload everything. So you wrote, you woke up, if you were able to get your hands on the physical paper, you did. But when you were away on tour, you didn't even do that. So you just could move on with life a lot more. Whereas it's changed. And so at times I do look back at that aspect or that part of my journey as a journalist and look at it longingly. So I think that's just human nature. People will always do that. But people accepting multiculturalism or the fact that Australia is looking different, sounding different, smelling different, and that's just going to change more and more and more. And I think Australia is such a young country, as I've learned. It's something that people in the UK and in the US are more immune to. I mean, obviously there'll always be characters who will bring up migration and there'll always be a political issue. But I think people in those countries are just more used to seeing, and the best way, the best spot to actually gauge that is when you take a tube or an underground in London, when you are on one of those. And I always do it every time I go to London, when you're on those really long escalators, which are never ending.
They go forever.
And you just like look across the escalator coming down or if you're going down, look at the one that's going up. You just see so much variety in terms of color and just the way people look, and the hair color. And I think it'll take a long, long time for Australia to get there, because Australia is such a big island cut off from the rest of the world.
We are still reasonably homogenised, I think. Particularly in Adelaide. I'm going to get to that question in a minute, but I want to ask you a question about, because you've talked a lot about what I call structural violence. You've called it out for the right reasons, and I think you've been very courageous to do so, right? Because you become then a target.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about, you know, the consequences of that, some of the fallout. Please don't tell me someone has threatened your life or anything like that, or has that happened?
That has happened quite a bit. Yeah, that has happened
really?
Quite a bit. So, I mean, you either get like, you know, get told to go kill yourself, or
Jeepers.
Or like, you know, about how a lot of people are waiting for you to commit suicide. That word gets used quite a bit.
Really? Wow, that's brutal.
It is, and like you just kind of. You can't get immune to it, but you kind of let it just slide off. And I mean, in terms
I'm really sorry to hear that.
No, thanks, Steve. But like, it's just, I guess, look, it's something that athletes get used to these days, because like when you're playing in the AFL in particular, on like high-profile leagues like that, because of sports betting, there are so many people who bet on. Like you hear it from athletes all the time.
It's big money now.
Big money, absolutely. So I mean, it's just once you're on social media or as a public figure, you have to take the hate that comes along with all the love. And it's mostly love, but there is always that bit of hate. I mean, so every time I've spoken up about discrimination and just like, you know, talking about racism more, and I've always tried to speak about racism not as it being an issue, but kind of explaining to you what it feels like when you are being discriminated, when you
Yes.
are the victim of any kind of discrimination.
Yes.
And I'll be the first one to say it's not that white people are immune to it. Like, they get discriminated against as well in their own way.
Yes.
It's not just a colored person problem. So, but every time I do that, obviously it gets blown up, and obviously there are people who want to come for me and target me and let's make more white babies before this guy goes on and does what he and you just like, for example, something like Bondi happens, and you can be as cut off from it as possible, as most of us are. But like, if you're a colored person, you will have like the handful of people saying, "Oh, you have blood on your hands," but like, there's no connection at all. Like, I'm from India. I have it was really tragic what happened. So rather than mourn the loss of innocent lives, like the fact that some people then go out and like find someone to sort of direct their hatred towards, and rather than actually, spending a couple of minutes in silence and, like I said, mourning or at least sending some love to the bereaved families. That's just the nature of modern society. And
yeah, sure.
you
Those
just
who are
have
going to be outraged are going to be outraged no matter what.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And who are they going to get outraged against? Like the person who doesn't look like them, and in my case, the person who, according to them, gets more prominence for just being a colored person. So, and it's not just, and I'll also at that point say, it's not just from white people. I get a different kind of hate from my own kind, which is more in terms of, or when I speak up about racism. Like, I wrote a piece about, I said it's being a brown man in a white man's sport, which is more about Australian cricket, and which still remains predominantly white,
yes.
Understandably so, from Usman Khwaja and my perspective. And the number of Indian people who've lived here for much longer than I have, or even Indians who moved here, who came after me saying, "Oh, stop shining a negative light on us. Go back if you find it so difficult."
Really? Wow.
And that honestly, Steve, breaks my heart a lot more than any death threat can, because if it's a death threat, it's a death threat.
Yeah.
Who knows whether they're going to follow it up or not. It's not in my control. But this almost, I feel like, and at times you go, and the only reason I started doing it as well 5-6 years ago is I realized, hey, hang on, I have a voice in this country. And if I don't stand up for people like not too many people look like this, thankfully, but my own people or others, like other migrants, like fellow migrants and expats from around the world, then who will? I mean, it's, I think, a duty of mine, and I do have thick skin. I can cope with most things, but that shouldn't mean that I just like say, all right, it doesn't affect me, so I'm not gonna stand up for you, or it shouldn't affect you either.
Yeah.
And I also didn't want to become that person who is used as a model by people who do want to be racist. Say, if he doesn't mind it, why do you mind it? And so that's why I started speaking up for them. And then when I would get and I started getting hate from them, a lot of them saying, "Oh, I've lived here for 30 years. I've never faced it. Must be the way you look. Must be the clothes you wear. Don't shine a negative light on us and on this country." And I go, "No, I'm not." Like, I always kind of start with talking about how grateful I am to be in this country. And like I just said, the opportunities this country has given me, and to so many people from around the world. But that doesn't mean that, like I wrote in that piece as well, I said, yes, I'm an Australian citizen, and I can't tell you how grateful I am to be one. But like, are you saying that the moment you give me the citizenship certificate, it also comes with a rider that, okay, now shut your mouth and you will never say anything negative about this country. You just go on with life, and forever you have to live indebted to what this country has given. I will always be indebted to Australia. But if that comes with this disclaimer that means I can never talk about anything that affects me, I'm sorry, I don't think that's how it works, because
no, it doesn't.
we all give back to this country as well.
Yeah, let me just kind of call that one out myself and say, you're an Australian citizen and you're entitled to kind of speak about your own country however you like. And so I think you're well and truly entitled to call out whatever you see as...
Exactly.
I mean, I call it structural violence, because a lot of the things that I've heard you talk about, for instance, where you get security guards asking you for ID and, you don't have a bomb or whatever. I see that as very structurally orientated. These individuals just do not know any better.
Yeah, true.
That's really all they know, and they're just demonstrating their ignorance, right?
Absolutely.
And so, but that doesn't mean you should let it. It's not like a free pass. And I think that's where I think it's appropriate for you to say, hang on, guys, I'm a bit sick of this, right?
Totally,
and you're right to say, look, I'm kind of a bit sick of, being asked all the time, and it's starting to get a little bit annoying,
Exactly.
and I think that's where I say that I think what you've done is completely measured and proportionate, really, to what no doubt you would have experienced, I reckon.
Yeah.
So, and I reckon you're really only scratching the surface. You see, I think I've heard you talk about these might seem like subtle things, but it's not. It's the cumulative effect of it.
It is.
And it's the assumptions that go with it, and in the bias. They always talk about unconscious bias. With racism and so on and so forth. And I call it you're educating people.
Yeah.
You're educating them and say, hang on. Do you realise what you're doing? You probably didn't know you're doing it.
That's it.
Right?
That's it. Yeah. And most times, I think 90% of the time, that's what it is. Even with something as serious as racism, I still feel 70% of the time it comes from ignorance. People just not knowing any better.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, it comes from spite from some people, and you know that. I mean, you can easily pick that out.
Yeah, some of it can be learnt behaviour, like neo-Nazis, who genuinely have this hatred.
Yeah.
But that's genuinely a learnt behaviour, right?
It is. It is, exactly. So I think it's even there, I always start with trying to educate people and say, look, you said this, okay, say it to me if you want, because probably you know me well or whatever, but don't say it again, because this is what it feels like. And I do it more, and it's not. It's going back to what you said originally, when you are popular or when you want to be, when you're looking for love and you are liked by a lot of people, it's kind of even more difficult when you to bring up this. It's uncomfortable to talk about things that impact you and affect you.
Yes.
But it's important that you do that. I do it even within my own friend circle or people who I consider very close to me within the media or even otherwise. I'll go, you said this just there. I wouldn't say that to another colored person. And most of them would be like, oh, why? What did I say? And I'll be like, or they'll be the other way around as well. They'll be like, is it okay if I do this or so and so? And I'd be like, for example, this lovely lady wrote to me before the Perth test on my Instagram and said, oh, a bunch of us want to come dressed as you, for some 15 of us. We bought wigs and there's a picture on social media you'll find. We bought wigs and we bought funky clothes and we're going to do that. And but I want to know if there's no culturally, I'm not being inappropriate. I said, no, not at all. And she did also then add that, oh, don't worry, we're not going to color ourselves or blacken our faces, which I thought was...
Why would you want to do that anyway? Did the blackface and...
exactly. I mean,
whoa, okay.
Yeah, but exactly. But I mean, she didn't say blackface, but she said, we're not going to color our skin. And I said, no. And it's so, she asked me so politely, and she just was curious, she just wanted to know.
She probably didn't realise.
She didn't realise, and that's a good thing though. Ask questions, they might not be, I'm sure she didn't feel comfortable asking me that question, but she did, and we had a great time. I met them, we were on Channel 7, and I got to interview them. So it's uncomfortable making yourself unpopular by talking about these things. That's why you can't do it all the time. You have to pick your moments, and but it is important that you do it. If you're not, and I know a lot of people just want to sit on the fence or fly under the radar.
Yeah, they don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah, and then you're not. But that's the problem, right? Fame and power and these things come with a lot of responsibility and duty. And I think I read this quote years ago from, I think it was Mr. Rogers, the children's
the children's author.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So TV host guy, and and that quote always stuck with me. It said that fame is just a 4-letter word if you don't do anything about it or anything with it. You don't use it for good.
Yeah.
And I always it stuck with me. So whether I'm famous or not, the fact that people like me, I try to use that to just spread that love even more and more.
Yeah,
And
sure.
when you do that, obviously you encounter these kind of situations, and I think it's important I speak about it.
Yeah, sure. All right. So let's move on to my next question. You've been quite open about these 2 drug overdoses from your time in Mumbai. And I have been to Mumbai now. That's a crazy city.
It is a crazy city.
It's a crazy city. And you talked about, hitting rock bottom, and then cricket became your lifeline. So I want to drill down a little bit more on you. You talked a lot about how cricket specifically saved your life. I just want to drill down a little bit more around what you mean by that and how it did that for you. Yeah.
I think like my relationship with cricket was very different to most Indian people's relationship with it. I mean, it is true that a majority of Indians, not all Indians, as you would have found out, are obsessed with cricket.
And they are, really. They play it everywhere.
They do.
Summer, winter,
it
literally, it's just everywhere.
It's what you do. Yeah. I mean, it really, the Indian team, and the pressure that they talk about on the Indian team being what it is, it's because for most people in India, cricket's an escape. It's not a religion. It's not a passion. It really is an escape. So for most of them, an Indian team winning is the best thing that will happen to them all week, all month, all year. So when the Indian team doesn't win, they take it personally because they're almost going, hey, I dedicated 6-7 hours to you, and it was almost your duty to make this work for me, because without you, what do I have? Like, life's tough in India for most people. Like 80-90% of the people, life's not easy. Even if you're middle class, there are lots of challenges like you face, and you most times you live like hand to mouth. So you need an escape. Bollywood is the same kind of escape, and that's why there are so many Bollywood movies made, and in 90% of them or 95% of them, there'll be a happy ending, because that's the only
type
thing
of
they'll
escapism.
have. It is all about escapism, and so is cricket. So that's just how people in India relate with cricket. For me, Steve, I think it was weird. Like, from a very young age, I've always said it felt like predestined that cricket would play a significant role in my life. Initially, I always thought it would be as a player. I played till a decent level, but I reached my I think my peak, both in terms of like how good I was, but also in terms of my dedication and my commitment to doing that. I wanted to do other stuff. But it was just like, so I was always referred to as the cricket guy. I know I get referred to as the cricket guy in Australia, but it's something that I've dealt with all my life, within my family, my neighbors, like wherever. I was that guy. I mean, I just, for some reason, always seem to know more about cricket than anyone else.
The cricket guy.
I was like,
the logical question I have to that is always, do you ever get sick of cricket?
I do actually. Yeah, I mean, I don't. People have this misconception about me, or actually not misconception, this assumption about me that all I do is watch cricket. I actually, since I've become a journalist, I only watch cricket if I have to. I have lots of other interests. I mean, pro wrestling is another interest. I play music.
Rock band.
Exactly. and I have like now we have dogs and animals and all of that. I do most things apart from, like, I don't listen to cricket podcasts. I'm not a big consumer of cricket books or cricket content unless it's work related. Like for example, once we finish here, I have the Australia-Zimbabwe game to do commentary on as a color commentator. So I will go and read enough about some of the Zimbabwe players who might be prominent, who I might not be well versed with. That's for work. Would I be doing that if I didn't have a Zimbabwe game to prepare for? I don't think so, because there's only so much of cricket content and cricket you can consume before you get burnt out, if it's your job. It was different before it became my job. I genuinely would watch cricket all day long. From morning, like, there would be times in the year when you could wake up at 2 a.m. in India and watch cricket in New Zealand. And then like that would like just feed into cricket in Australia. And then there would be cricket in India. And then there would be cricket in South Africa. And then go to bed, or not even go to bed, like then cricket in West Indies would start and then once again bleed into the test match in New Zealand. So that used to be my life. But I think cricket just was that, for me, it was more than an escape. It just became my identity from such a young age that like whether, I remember so many relatives, whether they were close or not, they would come home and say, this child I can't imagine him do anything but cricket. Somehow cricket will be part of his life. And how true they were, but it was that obvious as well. So So when I say that cricket saved my life, I think throughout that period where I went completely haywire, my life went completely out of my control. That was also because I was trying to escape from my own reality of what my life was with my brother. And again, I wasn't it wasn't a case of I chose alcohol and drugs to escape, to forget about all that. It was just I had freedom once he left. So I started growing my hair, which is why it's so important to me. And I just was doing whatever, but everything was in excess because it was all part of my freedom. And also the fact that my parents are nice people, but they didn't kind of care enough in that sense to even know much about what was happening in my life.
Yeah.
All right, we've seen him every day. That's all that mattered to them. So, and during those periods, cricket, because I was the cricket guy, I still had to kind of keep on top of what was happening with cricket. So I almost felt like I was duty bound to cricket. So I remember the 2003 World Cup, but more than that, the 2007 World Cup, which is when I was probably, I wouldn't know what was morning and what was night because we were just, I wouldn't even say we were partying. We were just drinking and doing drugs and all of that to such an extent that, I didn't know what time of the day it was, but I knew when the cricket was on. And I would still watch the cricket in whatever state of stupor I was in. Because what if someone asked me tomorrow, the next day about, who is this Namibian cricketer? Or in 2007, it would have been, who's this Irish cricketer? Why are Ireland beating Pakistan? Or what happened to Bob Woolman? I just had to know. I mean, that's why all my memories in life were cricket based. I remember even when I was young, I was very little and I would get sick. My mother would ask me how I was feeling and I would describe how I was feeling based on cricket scores. I remember, I'll never forget in 1994 I got chicken pox and it was bad chicken pox. I was 9 years old or 8 years old. And I remember my mom would ask me every morning, how are you feeling? And I'd be 3 for 90, or 90 for 3. It was or I would be oh no, today I'm feeling it's 150 for 1.
Sure.
And my mother wasn't a cricket fan, but she understood enough. So it just was that played such a big part that it always kind of sobered me. Cricket always, even if I was high on something, it always sobered me. And which is why when I did overdose those 2 times, especially the second time, I'm not religious, I'm not spiritual, but I prayed to whoever was ready to listen to give me a second innings, a second chance. But more than second chance, it was a second innings. But I just felt like I'd really messed up in my first innings for no reason. No, it was nothing external. I mean, to an extent, my brother, but more so in those few years, it was completely me. And I just felt like I'd thrown my wickets away. So I just needed to make the most of this. And for that brief period, it didn't feel like I would get a second innings. So, which is why, again, I've always said I owed a lot to cricket. And look what's happened since. It was again cricket that bailed me out. Because when I didn't know what to do in life at that point, I did say that I'm never going to do drugs again after the second overdose. But then what do you do? You're in Bombay, 3-4 years have passed and you don't know much about what really happened. I still meet people who tell me that apparently I did this with them and we had this great time. I go, good for you. I don't really remember you.
Right. That must be a bit weird.
It is really weird. And even more so now once you get older and someone says, oh, you remember me? We went out here. I'm like, yes, we did. So then again, someone said, hey, look, someone in my mother knew said, oh, why doesn't your son try journalism? There's this course in Chennai. And my mother suggested it to me and I said, look, I don't know anything about journalism. I can tell stories. I've always told stories. And there was this really good friend of mine who lived in our apartment complex, who was much older than me, was closer to my brother's age. She didn't know much about cricket, but she dabbled a bit. She worked for a cricket website, which I think very briefly in 2003, that 2003-04 period. And I remember she had to write previews for the World Cup, and she came to me and said, I don't know anything about this. Can you help me out?
Had to write previews.
So that was the first time.
And that's how you got your entry into...
Yeah, I mean, that was not even the entry, Steve. That was the first time I wrote. So 4 years later, when this journalism thing came about, and I asked that friend, I said, does that count as journalism, what I did? And she's like, yeah, kind of. Like, yeah. So I said, okay, if that's the one way I can get out of Bombay, because if I'd stayed back in Bombay or Mumbai for a few more few more months, I would have gone like sucked back into it, because my friends were still, some of them like just stayed where they were.
Yeah.
So I had to leave the city, and it was cricket who came to the rescue.
Yes.
Cricket journalism happened. I mean, I went to journalism school, and I remember being completely overawed there by all these other bright kids who knew about Chomsky and Marx and all these things that, like, what was happening in the world. All I could talk about was like, well, can we talk about like, what the West Indies are doing this year? Yeah. And there were only a handful of, and you can imagine in a school like that, where I would have fit. Like, I was the complete outlier. I mean, nobody gave me a chance in those 10 months, that whether it was the students or the professors in particular.
Yes.
I was just the comic relief. Like, and I was used to being the comic relief, so I was like, fine, I'll just like run with it. But like, if we had to rewind the clock, if you and I somehow managed to walk into or get on a time machine, walked into Asian College of Journalism, and it's like, say, August 2007, and we were to say, yeah, that guy you see with the long hair, the weird guy, he's going to be in journalism, probably the only one in journalism, one of 3 people in journalism from this batch, 18 years on, and a lot of people around the world will know about him. Like, people would have laughed at you. Maybe I would have also joined them and laughed at you. So yeah, I mean, the odds were really against me getting to where I was in more ways than one. But who came to my rescue? It was cricket, and it continues to come to my rescue.
Yeah, when I hear you talk, cricket becomes like a bit of a metaphor for life too, because sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I hear you, when I hear you talk, cricket really is just a metaphor for life, right? So when you use that expression of the second innings, right, which actually was the title for the Australian story, that's a perfect metaphor, isn't it, really? So, and cricket, or like any sport, is full of metaphors, really, which are very kind of run parallels with life. So I'm not kind of surprised. But I'm going to ask you a question about, you mentioned your brother a few times. It sounds like a very difficult relationship. Have you reconciled with your brother, or is it just, I'll let you answer that how you like. I mean, you can say next question if you like.
No. I mean, I think the question of reconciliation with him is challenging for me.
Sure.
Because we don't come from so whenever I bring up my family, people say, a lot of people will say, families are dysfunctional, you don't know about my family. But I think ours was such a weird one. And my wife, Isha, when the first time she met us, she called it within a day. She said, you are not a family, you're just 4 individuals who happen to live under the same roof.
Oh, right.
So she, and that line has always stuck with me, and because she just summed it up so beautifully. Because that is an
excellent insight.
It really was for my own sake, and I was in my early 20s at this point. So I think...
do you think that is a consequence of the arranged marriage?
I think a few factors. I think, yes, arranged marriage for sure. And both my parents, because they were so career-oriented and they were so... Neither of them really wanted to get married. So back then in India, in the 70s even, unless you got lucky, arranged marriage was the way out. And both of them left it so late that, again, there was a huge age difference. My dad was like 43 or 44 when I was born. And I was the second child. But they got married so late that they had to kind of, have the first child immediately. And I think it was like my mum in particular, I had so many chats with her about it over the years. I think she had just kind of moved on from wanting to get married, and then it happened. And so... and I think the first child happened, at least they were still in their 30s, both of them. But then I actually love telling people and me, was not a mistake at all, but I was basically the child that they could have done without.
Okay. That could be difficult to reconcile with yourself.
Exactly.
To kind of even hear that is... not easy, I can imagine.
It's not. She even brought it up recently on a phone call to me.
Oh, okay.
So, but again, I guess I think of life so differently because and I don't think I'll be the person I am if I wasn't from a household like that. So, for me, I don't need anyone to take care of me, or I crave for affection, but if I don't get it, I'm okay, because I've spent most of my childhood in that fashion.
Yes.
So you so as a result, like, so when what my brother did to me, it was, and I don't think I have sympathy for him, but I kind of understood where he was older than me. He wasn't as popular. He was just personality-wise, he was different. So he struggled to make friends. He wasn't easy. Like, he was raised by this grandmother of mine who passed away when I was very young. So she spoilt my brother. She didn't have a great relationship with my mom. So she ruined my brother, really. And then she died. So my brother was left with, like, nowhere to go. And then my mother had the full freedom to raise me because her mother-in-law was dead.
And then you came along and probably would have felt a bit threatened, no doubt.
Absolutely. So he always had this thing out against me. And then he just took it out on me. But the problem was, it just became, it went from, or like, it was way beyond this usual, two brothers fight and it's just like sibling rivalry and all of that. It was pretty brutal, like what I went through at his hands. And it was very physical, a lot of pain, which is why I honestly believe my pain threshold is so high, because I was beaten up so much. But I think it was also a case of that, the psychological kind of, the best way to put it is like lack of freedom at home. So I had to be so careful for someone like me who's so free with what he says and all of that. If he was around, I had to be so careful with what I'm saying, what I'm doing. I would not know what mood he was waking up in. Like I do credit him though for that whole thing of how I consumed cricket, because he was obsessed with cricket. He's a very successful scientist, I must say, who's made a lot of money, has a very successful life in LA. He went to the US when he was young, self-made man. Professionally, you can't question him at all. But so I did get those parts from him about, like, you focus on the commentary. Like, so we knew about commentators in the early 90s, which no Indian kid would back then, because nobody cared. Like, everybody would get together and watch the cricket. So very few did anyway. So he did instill those things in me. So when we were playing cricket, even there, cricket was a safety net for me. If we were playing cricket, he was okay. He would not beat me up. But when there was no cricket on, I didn't know what kind of mood he was going to be in. It would just flip very quickly.
Yeah, wow.
So all of that kind of happened, and then he went away. So I speak to my brother once a year. Like, he really wanted me to come to LA in 2024 when I was in the Caribbean, because I hadn't met his second son at all, just to say, okay, this uncle of yours does exist. And now that people know about me, he meets people over there, Indians and Australians and English people and other from Commonwealth countries, people from Commonwealth countries in the US, and even like Americans now, because cricket people are aware of cricket.
Getting big now in America.
And they tell him that, wait, hang on, you're Bharat Sundaresan's brother? Like, and they go like, oh, we like. So, he will tell my mother that, this happened and whatever. But the question of reconciliation never happened, because I don't think in our family those things work, because you still need to be a family for those things, right?
Sure.
So the way we've dealt with it is, we just kind of moved on. So when he reaches out to me, if he has some issue going on, I'll hear him out, and then we'll once again just move on. Like, there's no. So I was very curious about how he would react to the Australian story. He didn't react at all. Like, he watched it, I know. Okay. My mother made him watch it. But I thought he would be upset that I brought it up and I made it public. If anything, the only feedback he gave, not me, but my mother, was, did he really have to talk about his druggy days? So I was like, wait, but did he just not miss the big bit about him? So that's how he deals with it. So I've kind of just So he doesn't feature very prominently in my life. So So there is no question of reconciliation. I've just moved on, and if anything, I've looked at it like most things. I look at most things as a positive. Maybe if he didn't, he prepared me for the world in some ways, or maybe prepared me for social media in some ways long before it existed.
Yes, that's one way of certainly you could look at it that's for sure. Well, let's move on anyway. That I realise, family dynamics can be tough.
It is,
They can be tough. But let's move on, if it's all right. Let's move on.
Yeah.
I want to ask you some questions around writing. Now, would you say you're a natural writer, like it's just comes easy to, or do you find like you have to work hard at it?
I don't think I'm a natural writer at all. I'm a natural talker. This is why I think commentary, touch wood comes so naturally to me. Like, but that I've done all my life. I always just, when I was a little kid in kindergarten, I used to come back home and tell my mother stories, mostly made up of like what the other kids were doing. And like I could always mimic people. So I would mimic all these other kids crying and all of that. Because I wasn't someone who cried a lot as a child. So I always told stories. So I personally am not surprised that broadcasting, even though it came a little later in my career, has come so naturally to me. Like I don't have to really think about what I'm saying, it just happens. But even though I've been writing professionally for 18 years, I still think I'm not the most natural of writers. I have my own style, I know that, but I still take quite a while to write. And actually it's not even the writing bit, Steve. It's look, I'm not one to get a diagnosis whether I have ADHD or not. But if I did not have ADHD, I would be very surprised. Like, yeah, it's very difficult for me to focus. So even if I take, say, 4 hours to write an actual piece, the actual writing takes place, and people have been quite astounded by the fact that I can do it in 12 minutes. It's the other stuff that I do. I'll write a line, I'll go somewhere else, and then, but that last bit. So the first book I wrote, it was 60,000 words or 60,000+ words. I wrote it in the space of 8 days.
Wow.
After having really pushed the deadline, where I had 2 years to finish the book.
So is it like a cathartic explosion? Or?
Absolutely, yeah. And then I did the second book the same way and the third book the same way. They've always worked like that for me. So, but I wouldn't, like, because I have seen so many outrageously good natural writers who, and at times I've always like quietly envied them going, oh, imagine if I could just like do that. But at the same time, though, I'm also not someone who frets a lot about. I know, for example, I know a lot of writers who will write a line and then go back to it and all that. I write the way I talk. It's all scattered. So I'll write 3 lines here, 3 lines there, 3 lines there, and I just like put it together. I just have that skill to do that.
Yeah, sure.
So it's not. But once I'm done, I'm done. Like I don't go and read back. At times I'll go back and read something I've written just for research. And then I do, ooh, that's pretty good, Bharat. Like, well done. Like, yeah, you're a good writer.
I think I've yet to come across someone who's a natural writer. I've yet to find out. I mean, obviously being an academic who's involved with the genre of academic writing, it's a very unique genre, very demeaning, and it's what it's required of you. But I'd like to think I know a little bit about writing.
I'm sure.
I find it's hard work. So I'm glad to hear you say that it doesn't come naturally to you, because I don't know if I've found anyone, who it comes natural to. There's always some grafting or hard work, involved. It's interesting. I wanted to ask you some follow-up questions around this cathartic. Like, do you have to do certain things to get yourself at a point where it becomes cathartic, or is it just a deadline thing, or like how do you get to that point where, okay, it's just going to come out of me?
Great question. I mean, I think for a lot of journalists you'll see, they'll give you the same answer. It is deadline driven.
Okay.
So when I wrote for the newspaper for 10.5 years, I found it to be much easier to write, because even though the one thing I cannot do, especially when it comes to covering sport, is I can't write while the cricket is on. Like, I have to watch every ball. That's just how I've trained myself. So you'll hear a lot of my colleagues say, oh, he won't even open his laptop till the game's done and we're all going home. But that's just how I've always functioned. So now I can't do it anyway, because I'm on air doing commentary on radio or TV. So so deadline always helps. Like the deadline, that, okay, if I actually push it deep and I have 45 minutes and I have 1,100 words to write, that's when I become a natural writer, because So I've always I know a lot of people who have known me for a long time in their profession. They say, no, and when I say I'm not a natural writer, they say, like, that's bullshit. Of course you are. And I've never understood where they come from. But probably what they mean is the fact that when it comes to the crunch, it just flows. Like I don't have to, I'm not the one who'll be pulling his beard.
Depends on what criteria you mean by natural writer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think I'm very OCD driven. When I go to bed every night, I have to check all the doors, and I have all those OCDs. But it's similar with writing as well. I can be an annoying person to sit next to when I'm writing, because I have like these little things, like quirks that I do with the keyboard, like where I'll write and then I have to like save it and I press this, and it's all like instinct. I don't have to think about it. I'll press the thing and I'll save it 3 times, like go and then I'll do this, do something, and then again I'll go to it's quite, I'm quite a noisy writer in that sense.
Sure.
Like, yeah, and but yeah, I mean, I do
Hit the keyboard hard.
hit the keyboard hard. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, back in the day, and I'm so glad I've stopped doing it. Till 7 years ago, I was a regular. I want to say the chain. I used to be a chain smoker, but I was still a smoker. So for a majority of my career, especially in India, like I did what every journalist did, like which is just before you write, you have to go have a smoke. And then once I stopped smoking, overnight I just stopped. Like with the drugs, I just stopped smoking.
Wow.
February 2019. So yeah, 7 years ago.
Wow.
And then I was like, what, why was I doing that? I don't need to smoke at all. Like, yeah, so I still do have my own little quirks. I'll walk around. I can't sit in one place for too long anyway. I'm very restless as a person. So I will walk around. So that's where especially in press boxes, that's where I've always befriended all the security guards. That's when I go and have a chat. Like, so even if it's for 2 minutes, I'll go ask them about their life and whatever.
Sure.
So I need that constant distraction. So, and the other thing I do, which annoys Isha, my wife, a lot, is when I'm writing, I'm always chatting with a lot of people online.
That's interesting.
That's my, like, I need, without the distraction, I get stuck. Like,
That's interesting.
I'll be talking about whatever. Like, yeah. And there are some tips that I always give young writers, Steve, is, and this is something I've followed. I mean, we all have like writers, or we all have some people who we kind of really rate income. Or even if it's not a specific writer, I always read something which has nothing to do with what I'm going to write about. Read something which I know will be good quality. I think it just like gets good words flowing.
That's
it's almost like get that good karma of words going.
It's almost like a modelling type effect, where you kind of model good writing, good prose.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. Now, I want to ask you some questions now. How much of a threat is AI to journalism? You know, and also social media, because you can answer, that's kind of a 2-part question, really, because social media has completely changed the landscape. I think of automatically news now, where I don't know why they call them citizen journalists, but, you know, someone with a smartphone can be a journalist and record like a crime going down or a car accident or whatever. You know, so that's an example how social media has changed journalism. And of course, all of us are dealing with AI in some form or other. So AI, again, is that a threat to kind of journalism in general? I mean, that's a 2-parter, I guess.
It is. I think I wouldn't be the only long-term writer who hasn't gone to ChatGPT and just like occasionally said, write an article like Bharat Sundaresan, just to see if how close AI is.
And how accurate is it?
I don't think it's very accurate. So I'm still like safe. Like, no, I don't think, I at least from a writing perspective.
That's actually a good thing, by the way. If you're listening, so that's actually a good thing. And it shows the humanness of your idiosyncratic writing. And that can't be replicated. This is what I try and tell my students. I said, I can tell if it's your work or not. If I've seen samples of your work, I can tell whether it's yours or not. And you know what? I always say, you know what? That's actually a good thing, because that's actually your ID. It's like your fingerprint.
It is. Oh, absolutely right. And like, you know, it'll be in the style you write, or the way you tell a story, or the framing of your sentences. Like, and which is why I mean, if anyone listening to this wants to be a journalist, you learn a lot about writing by writing, but also by editing. Because when you edit, you understand those things about other people's writing. You understand about writing, like how they write. So, then you realize, this is their style. So you're kind of getting your mind to be more conscious about what you're doing. You're just not writing for the sake of writing. Because that's when you risk dragging cliches into your writing, right? It's when you don't give it too much thought, and give it too much thought is more along the lines of, why am I writing in a way like this? So it helps. Like I started learning more about my writing after I started talking about my writing to younger journalists. So like when I used to be called to just speak about writing, I was like, oh, that's why I do this. Like and there are so many like important lessons I've learned about that. But I don't think AI will be able to replicate that 100%, because AI doesn't have, for example, AI Bharat Sundaresan doesn't have the life experiences I have, right? So, like whether it's the analogies I'm using, or even my voice in that
Yes.
cannot be replicated. So
Yeah.
I think we are safe in that sense. Social media is a completely different beast. I mentioned it earlier, what it was like the first 4-5 years of my career, where you didn't have to worry about it. Like I barely tweeted before I moved to Australia. I barely used Instagram before I moved to Australia. So because once I became a journalist for a website, I just thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And then I just continue to do it like to this day. But I think the reason I can still do it is I don't really give it too much credence in terms of, and that's been the big change though, Steve. Like a lot of people now are younger and older, and like, some very, very big names in cricket commentary and cricket writing and the cricket media still obsess over social media, where they let social media drive what they're going to say. And
Yeah, right.
yeah, and
Wow.
like, I've commentated with people who are like checking Twitter while they are doing commentary.
Yeah, right.
And that's been the big, and the only way to use social media is you have to be its master. If you let it start dictating terms, and I'll have young journalists who'll.
Well, that's really what your story is saying. It's
Yeah.
saying that social media has become your master to the
Yes.
point where it's controlling what you're going to potentially maybe say.
Completely, and you're also kind of rating your own work based on random like questions, and in the sense things that cannot you can't really substantiate in any way. And the easiest way to describe that is I would have written a piece which is like 2,000 words, and I've just tweeted it, and within like 5 seconds, there are 50 retweets and 100 likes or 1,000 likes. And I'm going, it took me a long time to write that. And I know for a fact you could not have read my piece
Yes.
in the space of 10 seconds.
In order to like it.
Exactly. And in the same time, there'll also be like something I've just like tweeted, and there are 5 negative comments even before I've like, so. And the problem with a lot of young journalists is I've had so many come up to me and say, hey, I've written this, can you just give it a read? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. And so before I could give them feedback, I would look to my right or my left, and they'd be sitting there just crestfallen. And I'd be like, what happened? It's a really good piece. And they'd be like, oh yeah, thanks so much. It means a lot. But it's been 15 minutes since I tweeted it. There's only 5 likes and just 2 retweets. I'm going like, but these are like people with no names and no faces, and you don't know who these people are, and like, why does it matter? Like, are you saying my opinion doesn't matter? No, he's saying, no, I really respect your opinion. Then I always say, but you clearly don't, or you're putting your random social media feedback coming from unknown faces, or maybe they just bought accounts, or people who matter to you, right? Like, I think that's where social media has really impacted journalism. And then the other thing is, unless you're a journalist, you wouldn't be aware of it, are the aggregators these days. So there are these aggregators all around the world. So before, like, as soon as you publish something, especially if it's a news story, like say Mitchell Marsh is injured, even if you're broken the story, the aggregator will pull it up and put it up, and they have millions of followers. So you lose ownership over your story in half a second.
Okay.
So that's been a big threat to journalists the world over, and there's very little you can do to stop that, because it's not. And even if you don't post it on social media, they are following. They have alerts, and they are spread all around the world, and they have alerts. So they will have a Cricket Australia alert. So once it goes up on CricBuzz or News Corp, they'll have it, and they'll just put it up. And
so that raises some interesting questions around intellectual property.
It does. Like, yeah.
Who owns the story?
Exactly. And even if they credit it, say they'll credit CricBuzz, but they have millions of followers and people follow them. People in the media follow them. So so there are a lot of challenges that social media is posed to, and the other thing is it's also open, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's open pathways for people to come into the media at different levels. So what it has also done is, because social media is all about opinion, like the example I've always used is, if I just say, if I just say the leaf is green, people will be like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I'll get 5 likes, or people go like, oh, this guy's lost his mind. Or there'll still be 2 people saying, oh, I always knew you had something against branches. That's why you talk about leaves. But
or greenness.
Yeah, exactly, or greenness. But if I immediately say, the leaf is green, but I know the leaf I once saw in India was greener. That's it. Then like, that's an opinion I made, and like that'll go viral. Like people will hate on you. People like so. Because a lot of people have come through social media into journalism, they bring that same ideology, and it's not clickbait really, but because they're looking for instant feedback.
That's right. This viralness is people obsessed with things going viral.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Because I always then ask the question, well, how can I make something go viral? I mean, obviously I have the podcast and other things, and my producer Luke, who'll be watching this soon, he's always saying, like, look at this video, this went viral, and we sometimes look at each other and go, how in the hell did that go viral? Like,
there's no.
And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, what like?
I mean,
do you have
algorithms.
Some theories or ideas around that, or
no? I think like I mean, there is something to be said about timing and all of that.
Okay, timing. Yeah.
Timing matters a lot. I mean, when people consume videos and depending on what audience you're targeting. But honestly, it's about someone with a lot of followers, for some reason retweeting you, or the algorithm just working in a way where but it is not in your control.
Hopefully you'll retweet something. I might tweet it. We'll make sure we get some photos later so we can do this.
No, for sure. But I think that's what really counts more than. So, for example, I do help out people like who suddenly say like, hey, look, I don't have too many followers. Is it okay if you retweet my article? I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely. If it brings more eyeballs to your piece, and I can help. So that definitely works. But I think what's happened is, like I said, because people are coming through the social media route, they just assume that they need to have an opinion on everything.
Yeah, okay.
So I face that issue in cricket media all the time. For example, okay, if India and Pakistan are having an issue, it's such a complex issue.
Yeah, even to get them to even play a game,
exactly.
It's such a big deal.
Yeah,
Holy moly.
And why that happens and all of that. As someone who
I think you have to
India,
understand history. I think
exactly.
A lot of people in Australia don't understand that history.
No, not at all.
And there's still conflict at the border, by the way, between India and Pakistan.
Massively. And like, they were the same country till 79 years ago.
Yeah.
So, it's still a very young, there's still people who saw partition. And partition was the biggest displacement of human beings the world has ever seen.
Yes.
Millions of people died, but it's not part of global history as much as it should be.
No, well, we don't know Indian history. I only know that because I've travelled.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know the history there.
So without knowing any of that, for people to like sit here and have opinions about India and Pakistan, but that's just the world we live in, where people feel like the only way you're going to go ahead in your life in media is by having strong opinions. But
or be controversial.
Be controversial. Yeah, that works as well. That they've learned from America.
Yes.
But in my experience, I've seen that has a very, if that's all you do, the shelf life's small, and you're also putting so much pressure on yourself to have an opinion on things.
Yes.
And I always tell them, if you're a pure journalist, you don't need to have an opinion on everything, right? Because we are dealing with facts, that's the easy job. You speak to someone on this side of the story, you speak to that side of the story, and you write it. You don't need to have opinion. And that takes a lot of stress off you. So
I always thought that's what journalism was. You're reporting on the facts. And
still should be, but you see a lot more opinion kind of sliding through.
Yeah.
And now that so many people have podcasts as well, and I'm a guest on a lot of them, but and regular podcasts, I mean, where your opinion is asked for all the time, it's just become its own beast. So, AI, I mean, you will keep an eye on it, but I wouldn't consider it a threat yet. Hopefully by the time I'm done with it, it just remains that way. But social media has completely changed the game in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, definitely has.
Yeah, around the world. And it's more so, I mean, actually, no, it's the same everywhere. It just, you can't escape it. So you have to kind of, it's a necessary evil almost.
Agreed, because most things, as I'm sure you know, are communicated, events are communicated, a whole range of different things are obviously advertised through various platforms. And I don't want to promote a certain platforms, but I think most people understand what I'm talking about. Now, I'm conscious of the time, and we could go for a long time, and I'm conscious we don't want to go for hours. Before I get to my last couple of questions, I have to ask you a few questions about cricket, right? So I'm gonna be very disciplined here, and I got to ask you a question. What are your thoughts or your theories and ideas around this hype of? I got to ask you a question around baseball. We've just finished the Ashes. And for me, as a interested observer, loves cricket, it seems like just complete hype. And it was just generated by media. And I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts, first of all, around Bazball and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to that terrible period England had leading into the Ashes here in 21-22, the last one, where they and then they got smashed here. It was probably the most one-sided Ashes series ever. There have been a few, like when Mitchell Johnson pummeled them, but this was worse than that, and COVID didn't help, and all of that. And then they went to the West Indies and they lost again immediately after. So they'd lost 17 out of 18 tests. And I mean, cricket means a lot more to English people than cricket means to Australians, is something I've realized in my travels over the years. And they just needed a facelift. They just needed something different. And so that's when
Brendan McCullum stepped in.
But even before him, Robert Key was brought in.
Yeah.
Because Robert Key was, at this point, very much a part of the media. I really like Robert Key. So we were in Pakistan together. We were doing commentary. He was on TV, I was on radio. Australia was in Pakistan. He was the neutral commentator there. And that's when I think he got the job, around that time. And suddenly they brought in someone sort of from the outside in that sense. And who was from in the media, obviously former England cricketer, and then he brings in Brendan McCullum, or he plays a major role in that, and Brendan McCullum basically, just uses the theories and principles that worked for him when he was a cricketer, and says that's the only way out. I mean, that's the only way out for England. So they needed something. They needed a spark, and that's where the whole concept came from. And on paper, Steve, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, whether you're a teacher or a coach.
Just there's a certain level, it's been called out and analysed a lot, there's a certain level of rigidity that goes with it, because it's just foot down, to use a metaphor, and that's it.
Yeah.
The foot just goes down and there's no half or quarter lift or anything. Just, let's just put the foot down.
I mean, there's no nuance. But I think that had more to do with the players than actually Brendan McCullum. So I think
that's interesting.
Yeah, to eliminate the fear of failure is something that most coaches yearn to do.
Yeah.
Most athletes try to bring into their sport.
Yeah.
I think all of us do as human beings, but it's not easy to do.
Allowed to fail.
Allowed to fail. It's okay. I mean, you just you will fail more times than you will succeed in sport, right? So that made sense. And I mean, they said, look, we don't believe in draws, and it all was brought in to support
for draws.
So to bring something to English cricket that they didn't have at that point. I think he kind of lucked out with the fact that at that point England still had so many senior players of high quality. I mean, you still had Anderson, you still had Broad with the ball, you had Chris Wokes, and you had Joe Root and Johnny Bairstow and Moeen Ali. They brought back for the Ashes, and Ben Stokes obviously is a very inspirational leader, which he is. So they had all those things going for them. The problem was they also had players who were mediocre, but it worked for them. And it works in sport, right? If you have those are the players you want. If those are the only resources you have, and you're going to make the best use of them, and you give them something that they can build with, it works. But once all those senior players went away, I think where they really got it wrong was this strong view that county cricket doesn't matter, that all our choices of selection will be based on, not so much a whim, but it's a vibe thing. We see this young off spinner bowling to Alistair Cook on Twitter or on YouTube, we're going to pick him, and completely ignoring the county system where there were so many runs. So they alienated what was the English cricket system, which had worked for so long. And it was just a matter of time before it was all going to come falling down.
A house of cards, really.
It was. And there was we've heard a lot now about Harry Brook and the off-field culture and all of that. So there was a lot of talk of it, the whole booze culture and all of that, which I heard from the English media even when we were there for the Ashes. But that's the thing with sport, right? Till the time you're winning, you can get away with whatever you want to say.
Exactly. Yeah.
The moment you don't, they haven't now, it all turns on them. So, and that's where it all ended.
And, sure.
So we'll see how long it lasts for. But on paper, there are still things you can take from that and go, okay, we can work with it.
Yeah.
But you need the right team, and like you said, it doesn't work if you're that rigid.
Exactly. The best batsman and best bowler you've ever seen, like live.
Live.
Yeah,
right.
and that's meant to be a challenging question.
Yeah.
So that could be from any country, but it has to be something you've seen live.
Yeah. Best batter.
And best bowler. And that could be fast, slow, or anything.
Yeah. I mean, I was very privileged to see Shane Warne bowl in the IPL. And even though, I mean, by the time I became a journalist, he had retired. I mean, I did watch him live as a fan.
Yes.
But I think Shane Warne for me, even right up to his last IPL game, he was just magic. Like
Okay. Good answer, because he's one of my favourite.
He is. I mean, I've been fortunate to see the best of the best as a journalist in the last 18, 19 years. But Shane Warne, still nothing can come close to him. Growing up, it was always Brian Lara, but I never saw him live.
Okay.
So I guess
as a batsman.
As a batter, But
but you've seen some amazing Indian cricketers.
Oh, I have.
Sachin Tendulkar,
Yep.
Kohli,
Yeah.
and Pant, who I just can't. I just go, I can't. Like whenever I see him bat, I just like Indian batsmen are just next level.
Yeah.
Next
no,
level.
they are. They absolutely. I mean, I was privileged to cover all of them: Tendulkar, Kohli, Lakshman, Dravid. Very little bit of Ganguly, but
So you're putting Lara in there, and
Lara's. I think, in my personal opinion, Lara was ahead of them. But I think the best batter I've ever seen, though, and I'll be accused of being biased because I consider him a good friend. It has to be Steve Smith, and I think the reason I say Steve Smith is he bats the way I think about life. I mean, he's so unique.
It's very unique
and he
unorthodox, I would say.
Exactly,
yeah.
But. And I've always said, there are a lot of role models you can have as a young batter or as a young cricketer who are much more easier to replicate. Like Virat Kohli, I mean, he's this level of determination, and I've known him throughout his career, right? I covered his first test and his last test. But that you can still try to be Virat Kohli in terms of having the determination, the dedication, the commitment, the fire in your belly, and just the way he committed to fitness and his diet and all of that. But Steve Smith's just unique. Like, I kind of relate with Steve Smith. I think which is why we get along. Because I appreciate the fact that he's his own man. He does his own things that nobody. I kind of I get a lot of it these days, having spent half my life watching him in the nets. But he can just do things that very few batters can.
Yes.
Yeah, and I
I'd
think
agree.
that pure and I saw him make one of the greatest hundreds ever in Pune on a turning pitch. I've seen him make some insane hundreds in England. When he came back and made those hundreds in Edgbaston after 1 year away from Test cricket with everything that was riding on it.
Yeah.
I've seen him make some amazing runs on Australian soil. So he's just, nothing like Steve Smith, to be honest.
No, good answers. Mind you, you're not showing your bias now that you're Australian. I'm pretty sure you're not picking them just because they're Australians, but they are exceptional. They always, particularly Shane Warne's always put in the top three easy, whether they're slow or fast bowlers, always in the top three somewhere. As for batting, well, that's an interesting open debate.
I mean, I would also
Record alone has Sachin Tendulkar, and Lara and Viv Richards, and I remember seeing Viv Richards live, and he's always one of my favourite players of all time, Viv Richards. Unbelievable. Just hands down, unbelievable. And that West Indian team was just next level. So I was lucky enough to see that live. They were just next level cricket. Absolute next level. Anyway, before I go to my last questions, how was So I'm fortunate I watched a lot of cricket prior to T20. Even one-day cricket. So obviously our Test cricket's always been around hundreds of years. And then we've got one-day international cricket and then T20. Now, as an observer, T20 cricket has changed the landscape completely, the game completely. Your thoughts on T20 cricket and how it's changed everything?
No, I think it's kept cricket relevant, to be honest. I mean, it has brought in so much money. And look, I mean, the utopia...
It's massive, IPL.
It is. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's... I mean, right now we're seeing a T20 World Cup, whichever way you look at it, 20 countries playing. Italy won their first match yesterday. Wouldn't have happened in any other format.
Yeah,
like so.
Good point.
It has
good point.
It has spread the sport, and like I think we can all I'm a romantic as well. I wish it was back to like it was in the 90s when you got to see the tri-series one days here and all of that. But without T20 cricket, like if you look at sport purely as a business, and it is a business.
Yes.
I don't think cricket is where it is right now. So you can't avoid it. And I think it's done a lot of good things for cricket as well, where whether it's in style of play, it's made, I think it's improved bowling more than it has even batting. Like people talk about the shots.
That's interesting. Few people have spoken about that, and I find that interesting, and I'd actually have to agree on that because it has definitely improved the standard of bowling. Actually, it was my dad I was talking to about that, because he said, without a doubt, the bowling has improved, and hence that's why a lot of the scores have been so low.
100%.
Mind you, the DRS has changed things as well too, which we won't get into. But I had to ask you a question about T20 now. Conscious of the time. Second last question I always ask my guests. What are 3 books that you would recommend? Feel free to plug any of your own work here that you would recommend, and why?
See,
you are a writer. See, this is a good question for a writer.
I am a writer, but I'm not a reader. No, look, I'm not I'm not a voracious reader, I must admit. So that's never been my thing. Again, I think I'm just the only place I am able to read books is on flights. I do fly a lot for work. So,
those long haul flights hurt.
Yeah, they are. They are. I mean, from a cricketing sense, I haven't read. I've read cricketing books more as reference.
Sure.
You
could say fiction.
No, exactly. I will.
You go fiction here if that's what you.
I think the greatest book I read growing up was Day of the Jackal. I thought it was just because I'm a storyteller. I always have been. The level of nuance in that book is just amazing. The detail in it,
apparently it's quite autobiographical. Even though they say it's fiction, they say it's actually based on his own experiences.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is so. When it comes to non-fiction and fiction, I like books that are written by people who have been journalists. They just add more facts to it, right? I think Beyond the Boundary by C.L.R. James about the history of West Indian cricket, because West Indian cricket
good one.
meant so much to me, is I think one of the finest books ever written on cricket. So that's definitely up there.
I'm going to check that one out for sure.
And I forget the name of the. So there's this one won a Booker Prize maybe 6 years ago. It's semi-fictional, and again, because I have such deep connections with the Caribbean, I think it's called The History of 9 Killings. It's by Marlon James about the attempted assassination of Bob Marley. But in that, the fiction comes from how the people who were hired to kill Bob Marley. So it did happen. I've been to the Bob Marley Museum. They show you exactly where it happened.
Yes.
But he fictionalizes or really adds a lot of depth to not to Bob Marley, but to the assassins.
Right.
And all these young kids. And I think it's the way you learn about Jamaica, and you learn about Rastafarianism. You learn about the history, the African history. I think all those things kind of just really add up. And it's more, and the one thing I will say is my way of understanding Australia, or trying to understand Australia and its history in the last few years, has been trying to read a lot of literature and a lot of books from either the 19th century or the early 20th century. Firstly, to understand how Australian white people wrote about Australia at that point.
Yeah, we have a very complicated history.
It is
Australia and Australians have a very complicated understanding of history and history, because we don't really have one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to learn about or to read about, there's one thing seeing or reading something that's written now about what it was like, for the squatters and the settlers and all of that. But it's something very different when you go back and find a book. I read, I think it's a classic of some sorts. I think her pen name is Henry Handel Richardson, the one that... There's a trilogy that she wrote about, and it's just and she takes you from, because I think they were written in 3 different periods as well. She takes you all the way from, it's fictional, from the late 1890s to the 1930s. So
Okay.
you see how Australia progresses, the language used and the words used for
Yes.
whether it's First Nations people or everything. And so I think, I like books like that where, I'm not a big philosophy reader or I don't understand politics at all. So it's more about that. I'm a big fan of like history and those things. Yeah.
I should qualify what I said before about history. I think Australians are grappling with what it means to be Australia and Australian, and part of that mix is history. And so I just want to qualify what I'm saying because it's a very complex space. And it's a contested space.
It is.
A perfect example, of course, is Australia Day. We had Australia Day the other day, which for some people is Invasion Day. And this is very complicated.
It is very complicated.
Very complicated for Australians. But let's not get bogged down on the politics here, because obviously history comes with politics a little bit. And so that's a tangent, maybe for another time. Now, my last question, I always ask my guests. Now, is there anything I've missed or anything you think that we should talk about?
No, I think we've covered the length and breadth of my life, and there are a lot of pro wrestling maybe, so I do dabble.
That's right, your rock band?
Yes, exactly. I love my music. I'm back playing the drums, so and I think all of it just is wrapped up in my quest to, like I said, entertain people. So to get into a pro wrestling ring and to be booed by 1,000 people and play the negative villainous character, I just derive a lot of joy from it because it's still people connection. So no, thank you so much, Steve. I've really enjoyed our chat. And we could go on and on about so many of those
definitely
things.
could go on. And we did very well today. And I forgot to mention at the start of the recording here that we're actually at Mount Lofty Gardens, Botanic Gardens up in Adelaide Hills. We've done quite well. So I thought someone might be setting up working before, and we've done very well. And so I want to thank you because you might have picked up during the interview, but Bharat's had he's moving house.
Yes,
very stressful.
It's been
and you've been very good to fit me in because he's also got T20 commentary commitments as well. And so I want to say thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Steve.
Yeah,
thank
no
you.
worries.
An absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks.